Hello, nerdy romantics. We are here talking Thunderbolts today. And today I have with me Jen, Perry, and Marcie to talk about Thunderbolts. As with just about everything else that I talk about TV and movie wise, we're probably going to spoil it. So, spoiler alert. All right, so stay tuned. We are talking Thunderbolts today. How's everybody doing?
Hello, hello, hello.
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 Hi. Yay! Oh gosh, I'm so happy to have y'all here because with Thunderbolts, I'll just say they're question marks. Okay. Question marks in my mind. So I wanted to see what everybody else thought about Thunderbolt. But since we have the gang on here, and Perry, you know what? It's been a minute since we've actually heard what you have been doing, writer wise and podcast wise. Perry, tell us what you got going on, writer wise and podcast wise.
So, not a whole lot. I do have an urban fantasy trilogy out, but I'm not sure how much I can trust that publisher to keep that going. So, just refrain from advertising that. But I am doing a sci-fi serial through Patreon. So, if anyone's interested in that, it is 2 episodes a week, $3 a month for advanced reading, and then 1 episode a week starting in December if you want to go on the free tier. So if you like Firefly, if you like any sort of like sci-fi space pirate type stuff, you definitely want to check that out. And that is at percivalconstantine.com or patreon.com/percivalconstantine.
All right, cool. We will have the links in the show notes as well, and maybe down in the description below if I can get my act together. Y'all know how I do. Oh gosh, but how's everybody else doing today? Marcie, Jen, how y'all doing?
Doing great. Doing great.
That's good.
Fantastic.
I'm glad to hear it. So, Thunderbolts. Let's talk about first how we came upon Thunderbolts. Like, did we go to the movie theater? Were we looking out for this one? Did we even know that this one existed until it came out? Let's be honest. Marcie, what about you?
So I didn't, but my nephew is a huge movie fan, Marvel fan. And so when he saw that it was available, that it was in theaters, he asked if we could go see it. And so we did a little family outing to see Thunderbolts.
Awesome
Awesome.
sauce. Jen,
So
how about you?
I totally knew that Thunderbolt was coming out. I'm a fan of Florence Pugh though. And so
Ah,
yeah, so she had kind of talked
yes.
about some of the work that she was doing on posting pictures and all of that kind of thing. And then in the month or so before, it just really ramped up in terms of posting some behind the scene pictures and press tour, press junket kind of pictures. So yeah, I was excited. I was ready for this, ready to go all in and watch it. And I had my hesitations because I really didn't know like what they were going to do with the story, and that's always the heart for me. I'm like, what exactly are we doing? I love the special effects and all that kind of stuff, but I'm here for the story. And
Yeah.
I loved what they did. I really loved it. So
Cool.
mhm.
Perry, how about you? Did you see this one in the theater? Was this one that you were waiting for? I know it's not
Yes.
Superman, but
No, not
okay.
Superman, yeah, but no, yeah, I could talk a little bit later about the comics influences, but I was a little bit I was not sure what to expect from Thunderbolts because it's very
Yeah.
different from what it is in the comics. So, and it felt that they were just kind of like slapping the name on it, and it didn't really feel like it fit with what the comic idea was. So, I was a little bit skeptical going into it, but I did see it in the theater. I see pretty much all the comic book movies in theaters if I can. So I did go to see this one in the theater, and man, I love it. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. Seen it a few times since. I've got it on digital, and still digging it each time.
Oh, I didn't say how I felt about it, but I will agree. The family and
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. We loved it. Yep.
Okay. Cool beans.
I'm
Well,
100% wishing though that I had watched it multiple times now because I didn't.
yeah. Oh, because you did. So, how long has it been since you watched it?
Actually, well, only about 30 minutes. So I went and
Oh,
I went and rewatched it this afternoon,
okay.
and I was like, yeah. So there's certain things that are fresh in my mind. I did have to fast forward a little bit, but
So I
Oh
have not
boy.
seen it since the theaters in July. So
Oh,
yeah.
this is going to be an interesting discussion. I
uh-huh.
see. I see. This is going to be something else. Well, unlike all of you, I did not see this one in the theater. I was planning to see this one in the theater, but around the time where I was planning to see it in the theater, I lost my full-time job, and so it's been job search ever since then. And so that means movie money goes towards something else. But I did see it on streaming. It's probably right as soon as it came out on streaming, like the day after I saw it on streaming, which
Hmm.
was, as of this recording, it was probably about a month and a half, maybe 2 months ago, I think.
Mhm.
And like Jen, I saw it a little bit earlier today to remind myself exactly what was this about. And also because I thought I didn't have any notes for it, but I do have some notes for it, but the notes kind of don't make sense. So
Okay.
in that vein, I'm going to kind of go over what I see here and ask for y'all's help with making sure that this connects. Because yeah, I made some notes a few months ago, and yeah, I'm like, what did I say then? What is going on here? But one thing that I knew that I wanted to try to do a few months ago, and that I thought, I thought that this movie was doing, that we were thinking other movies were doing, was being a connector kind of movie.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And I don't know if y'all felt the same way of it being kind of I don't want to say tie in, but being kind of a connector, a movie that kind of connects what we may know and
Mhm.
what we may nostalgically have in our minds when we first started watching MCU, and kind of what we're thinking about now. So in the past, we've talked about the Marvels being a connector movie and a
Mhm.
tie-in movie. And we said maybe on that. We said maybe possibly tie-in kind of thing with Captain America a little bit. But I
Mhm.
think this one really is kind of that connector movie, or at least that movie that is pulling us forward in the
Mhm.
MCU. Yeah,
Hmm.
what do y'all think? Yeah,
I feel like
Jim.
there was
Yeah.
I feel like there was some stuff that happened in the TV series. So specifically in Falcon and Winter Soldier,
Mm,
that part of that there were some things that happened there
yeah.
that if you haven't seen the TV series, you might be a little confused and kind of come into this movie a little, kind of on your back foot going, I don't know exactly what's going on here. And so this was a great movie though to kind of bring people like bring these folks really to the forefront of the theatrical release because not everybody watches everything that comes out, unlike me.
Right.
I watch almost
Yeah.
everything that comes out. And so I do see how that was kind of getting people from a couple different places. I mean, Yelena made another, she was obviously in some of the
Black
movies,
Widow.
but
Yeah.
we saw a lot more of her in Hawkeye, right? She makes this appearance in
Yes.
Hawkeye, and we get a little bit more of sort of personality, a little bit more sense of who she is as a person as opposed to somebody who's sort of a lower level, sort of character. And of course, we had her in the Black Widow movie, which was a Black Widow movie, and then Yelena was the sister. So we got to see a little bit more of these guys in the television shows. And so, but this bringing them all to the big screen, all to kind of also give them all an immediate way to feel we're all going to feel something about them because the movie spends a lot of time going into their backstories and humanizing them a lot in a way that we don't usually see about our villains and our bad guys and our, comic relief, if you will, that
Yeah.
these guys have been playing
Mhm.
in the previous movies.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think having also recently seen Captain America: Brave New World, of course,
Mhm.
and so seeing Valentina and then seeing her again, I
Mhm.
think, there was definitely a connector there.
Mhm.
And she's one of my favorite, like, you don't see her coming, but
Yeah.
I love to see her on screen.
Yes.
I love her dynamic. And I think, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is killing the role. So there was that
Yes.
connection there. And that to me was the most recent because I don't watch most of the TV shows. So
Mhm.
for
Mhm.
me, that was the most recent theatrical connection for me because I don't watch most of the series. And so I thought that was fun. And then of course seeing the hidden credit and then the hidden scene, the post scene credit, and seeing
Mhm.
Fantastic Four and that lead in. Of course, my nephew was beside me saying we got to see that. So it was also, I think, a way to try to tee up that franchise, which
Yes.
has people have mixed feelings about as well.
Yes. Very much
So,
so.
so yeah, I do think it was a connector series. I think it was also a way because it's so long before the next Avengers comes out that I also think they were trying to keep people engaged and excited about what might be coming. And to Jen's point, pulling the story forward as that happens, just moving us to where we're going to start the next round and kind of helping us to move
Mhm.
past where we thought we were because the timelines get a little screwy. And
Yeah.
so I do think it was intended to be a connector. Whether or not that works remains to be seen, or whether or not it was necessary, really. I mean, if you're an Avengers
Yeah.
fan, you're going to see the new Avengers regardless. And I don't know if it helped Fantastic Four at all to have them launch them in that one, but I think that was the intent.
Yeah. Yeah. As one of the three here who are not necessarily comic book readers but all in on MCU, or at least mostly in on MCU, at this point in the MCU, I've noticed a lot of people who are either in the MCU or just got into it because they wanted to see Chris Hemsworth swing a hammer. There's a little fatigue happening. And so I think for me, or in my opinion, this movie got just revived things a little bit. You know, I
I,
think Captain America, when I went into Captain America Brave New World, I wanted that one to revive things, but I got
right.
confused when I left there.
So
And I really wanted that one to do what I think this one does. But I don't think everybody that probably needed a little reviving or whatever got to see this one. I'm not sure how that happened. I think to a certain extent, though, I agree that it was totally a connector movie. There's so many different things that we've seen everybody in this movie in that either if you haven't seen them, you're not as enriched, or if you haven't seen them, you may be a little lost. Now I don't know,
mm,
I feel like the story itself, if you go in and you don't know these people at all, and you go in and you watch the story itself, you're going to get a good story. You're going to get a good
mhm,
movie. But if you go in with at least a few of these connectors, like Valentina and her antics, or Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or Hawkeye, Black Widow, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., whatever, if
mhm.
you got at least a couple of connectors, you're going to get a little more enrichment. You know what I mean? You're going to feel things a little more. It's going to feel a little more like, ooh, when we first started watching. Maybe not that, but you kind
I,
of get a little bit of the revival, or at least that's how I felt a little bit.
so I didn't get.
Um,
I don't know that I felt that as much, but what I did feel was that I got to see the other side of things. I got to see the other side of the snap, the other side of heroism. I got to see
yes.
the other side of being a superhero. And I got to see, and I think it gets reinforced in Fantastic Four, but we get to see what that sacrifice really cost them because we don't see it in the big theatrical ones. We don't see what it costs them necessarily. Like you see, Hawkeye leaving his family, you see those kinds of things. But I think it gave a different perspective of what it is to be a hero, and especially what it is to be a hero when people are fickle and when
Mm,
your heroism is relative, right? When you
yeah.
don't deliver the way the people expect you to, or when there are no more missions, or when you do too much. You cross the line that people you can save us, and this many people can die, but this many people is too much. And you know what I'm saying? Like you get to see what
Yeah.
it feels like when you are expendable, where you're perceived as expendable,
Yeah.
and what happens in that. And I thought, to me, that was, to your point, a really good story and a really good perspective, because I think it was interesting to see the other side of what happens. Like we see a little bit of it in some of the Avengers, where you see Black Widow, or Scarlet Witch, no, Black Widow, like looking for, like, keeping things running when everybody's missing and accounted for. You see a little bit of that, and you see
Yes.
a little bit of that. You see a little bit when you see Thor fat on the couch in the struggle. You see a little bit of that, but I think this, to me, was kind of more of that. And to your point, I really enjoy getting to know these characters in a different way and getting
Yeah.
to see more of them in character development than we normally see when there's a war, a big war or something.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Perry, what about you? Did you feel that this was a connector in the MCU? And is this even a connector in comic book worlds?
So yes to both of those, but with some clarifying words too.
Okay.
Yes, it is a connector, right? It does pick up stories from a lot of basically like supporting characters from other stuff, right? So we see all these different characters who have had supporting roles in other stuff, like Yelena, who really is the takes center stage here. This is basically her movie. But we also get John Walker, Bucky. I mean, Bucky, you could argue he was more than a supporting character, but we're picking up more stuff. He's kind of, I think he's like probably the glue to the larger MCU that more people are familiar with. But then also, Taskmaster pops back up, Ghost pops back up, who we haven't seen or even heard of since Ant-Man and the Wasp. So yeah, this is a good way to kind of like go back into these characters and touch on them in a way that felt much more organic than it did in Brave New World when we were touching back on what happened with the leader and the rest of the Incredible Hulk crew. So that aspect, yeah. But even though it is a connector, it is also does move things forward, right? So we do see this new Avengers team formed as a result of this and what happens here. And then we also get that connection to Fantastic Four. We get hints of what we're going to see in Doomsday because they're talking about stuff happening in space and this conflict between Sam's Avengers and Bucky's Avengers. So we've got all this stuff going on that does link it to the larger MCU. But at the core of this movie is it's not a connector at its core. At its core, this is a movie about these broken people. And I think that they really zeroed in on that, and they really kind of, yes, it connects to other stuff. Yes, we're looking back in on these characters that have been in these disparate projects, but that is not the core of this movie. The core of this movie is the characters itself. It is dealing with their failures, dealing with their mental issues, and all that. So I thought that was a really interesting way to do it compared to some other movies that people have thought were just purely about, okay, let's just move things forward. Let's just see how we can connect it to other stuff, right? This one, they really put character first, and the connector stuff was just, if you know, you know, type of thing. It was very much sort of, it was kind of a reward for people who have been keeping up with all the different movies and all the different TV shows. And if you have been doing that, then you will definitely get a lot out of this. But I do think that this movie was a little bit underserved in the marketing, because I don't think it was marketed the best. Like I said, even going into it, I didn't really know what to expect of it from the marketing. And I didn't really have any preconceptions from the comics, because this is very different from how it is in the comics. So all of that to say, like, going into it, I'm just like, what are we going to do here? What is this? Is this just going to be a way to tread water and throw some of the characters together because we don't have access to the big name characters, is what it felt like from the marketing. But when I actually went and saw it, I was blown away by how good the character stuff really was in this. Now, as for the comics, the Thunderbolts has gone through a few different incarnations. The first one was, there was this big event in the 90s called Onslaught, when the Fantastic Four and the Avengers basically sacrificed themselves to stop this big threat. They actually got transported to a pocket universe, but that's a whole other discussion.
Oh my gosh, pocket universe! Let's not start with that again.
But anyway, so in the main Marvel universe, though, there was no Fantastic Four, there were no Avengers, so they're all this question of who's going to fill the void. And then this new team popped up. This new comic book popped up called Thunderbolts, and it was this team of it was billed as this team of all new heroes, and then the first issue was billed as, you won't believe the shocking secret behind these characters. And then you get to the end of the first issue, and the leader of the team, Citizen V, pulls off his mask, and he's got this scarred face, and he puts on another mask, and he's actually Baron Zemo. And all the Thunderbolts were Avengers villains who were operating in disguise. And so it was this whole idea of, we are going to pose as heroes to trick the public into trusting us, and then we're going to take over the world, type of thing. So,
oh my gosh.
And then as the series progressed, some of these characters, they realize, hey, being a hero is actually kind of fun. People like us now. We're getting all this praise, and we feel good about ourselves. So there's this real push and pull between the characters. So some of the characters honestly decided to take on a redemptive side. They eventually got betrayed by Zemo. Zemo showed his true colors, and the team broke away from him. And then Hawkeye ended up taking them under his wing and leading them for a long time and helping them reform. And they went through a few different incarnations of this idea of trying to reform. And then later on, after the Civil War crossover, it became more of a Suicide Squad type of thing, where the Thunderbolts was kind of like the Suicide Squad thing, where they would have these villains who would be forced to work for the government and that kind of thing. And then after that, there was a very terrible version with the Red Hulk leading them as his personal hit squad with Punisher and Elektra and Deadpool. And it was a terrible one. Nobody likes that one. And eventually they've gone back to basics. You've had Bucky leading a more recent version that's similar to what we see here. So they were trying to do movie synergy. But aside from those, the characters that have had associations with the Thunderbolts, Yelena was part of it when it was the Suicide Squad type thing. The Ghost was too, but it was a different version of the Ghost. Like the Ava Star version was created for the MCU. There's a different version of him in the comics. Bucky was part of a later incarnation of the team. U.S. Agent was kind of involved with them, but after this big crossover, he actually ended up in a wheelchair, and he was serving as the warden of the raft, so he was kind of leading the program as the warden of the raft type of thing. But yeah, none of the main characters really that people most associate with the comic are in this movie, and it doesn't really have any of those same connections to the movie. At first I thought they were going to go for the Suicide Squad type thing, but it's really not that either, right? We find out that they all just basically just band together out of chance, or not chance, but out of desperation, more or less.
Right.
So yeah, yes, it's a connector in both the comics and in the movies, but it's also its own thing too.
Yeah. But it's interesting that you say that one iteration of it is a Suicide Squad kind of thing, because that's kind of at the beginning, that's kind of how you feel about kind of them when they're coming together, you get that Suicide Squad kind of feel, even though they're not Suicide Squad, obviously, but you get that kind of feel of a ragtag band of people who don't want to be heroes. So the reluctant hero trope is like everywhere in this. And all of them have, which this connects with the theme of depression and mental health, all of them have something about them that somebody could say, this person's a loser kind of feeling. You know, they all have just something about them that has that, like, no, I can't be a leader. No, I can't do this. You know, we're just trying to get, like Yelena says, we're just trying to get home. It's like, we're not trying to lead anything. I think the only person that really wants to get together and be is Red Guardian.
Where I was like, except Red
Alexi
Guardian,
is
he really seems to be about this life. He was like, yeah,
I
let's do
know,
it.
he's so all in it. Oh gosh, he's so all in it. I love it. It was like that same energy, but times 10 from Black Widow. Like, he was like that in Black Widow, and then he just amped it up here. I was just like, this is so fun. But we get that kind of reluctant hero here from all of them. And I think that's really kind of to me, there's two major things why I really like this movie. One is they're all reluctant heroes and they all have issues, and so in a sense they're all relatable, right? You know, they all have something going on, so they're all kind of relatable. And then the second thing is that the theme of depression and the character of the void and everything like that gives us kind of a humanizing of superheroes, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
kind of
Exactly.
a dramatic, like a humanizing kind of thing, which also makes it relatable. So even if you don't know anything about any of these folks and you've never seen anything that any of these characters have been in, it's just a really good movie based on that.
Yeah.
It really
And
was. Yep.
you know, I mean, okay, so I'm not the only one that's thinking that. All right, all right. So
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean that, I think that Marvel did so many they did so many movies that were sort of your standard superhero movie, right? We've got somebody with superpowers, they've got something that they have to solve, they have to use those superpowers to like solve something. And they started exploring, sort of some of these other themes in the television shows, right?
yeah.
And they really started to kind of play around with how they tell a story and what it is that they're doing to convey, more about the character, make it deeper and more meaningful within the confines of the superhero MCU kind of world, right? And so I love that they have taken a lot of that onto the screen as opposed to leaving it on the television shows. 'Cause I feel like in television, they really explored some themes. They explored grief, they've explored racism, they've explored, this feeling of I don't know what place I have in the world anymore. They've explored that as well. And so now we have it on the big screen. We have an exploration of regret and all the things that you've done that what are the things that you've done that make you who you are and what are the choices that you make going forward in terms of choosing who you want to be. And so we have, which is that's a very big theme to like explore within superheroes and explosions.
Right,
I think
exactly.
I think you're right because when you see, and going back to Captain America: Brave New World, you see Bucky choosing to be a hero but having no special superpower. And then in
Yeah.
this film, you see people who initially chose not to be the hero
Right.
and then also have to grapple with, and how can I be a hero with no special, like
Yeah.
what makes a hero, right? And
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and they have to overcome having already been a villain and having already made
exactly.
those mistakes and having to decide
Exactly.
if that's who you are forever or if you can
Mhm.
choose to be something different. and also recognizing that choice is relative, that for most of them, those choices were survival choices at most of the points in time. They weren't necessarily, I'm gonna go out like Megamind, I'm gonna go out and be, a villain today. It was more this person, most of the time, there was someone who said that they saw something in them, and this was their way to be accepted in a space, right?
Yeah.
To be included. And it just so happened that in the doing, it was on the bad side of the world, right? But it got them what they could imagine was love or family or community or something. And so to see them rebuild that and have to try to shed some of those layers and, like you said, drop some of those things and decide if they're going to continue to carry those on to the future, and then have to confront those things to move past them. I think you're right, Yvonne, from a mental health perspective. It was a good story, and I think it is one that kind of resonates. And I do think it's one that we don't often see, because you do see the heroic special powers, gifted from birth, amazing, and now you see these people who have the same journeys that we would have, and have to choose to be more than they think they are, more than they have been before, in order, and they have to take a lot of flack from people who don't even appreciate the choices they're making.
Right.
But still make them. And I think that's, I think that was an important story. It was also like a good story, and you meet Bob, and Bob's got some special challenges going on too. And
Yeah.
and so I think that there was just, I mean, it was a good story. I didn't know nearly as much about all of the characters, because again, I didn't watch the show, so there were a few that I didn't have any knowledge of until the movie. But yeah, I think they did. I think, to me, it was one of the first times we really got to see the characters evolve and really stay with them through that evolution. Most of the time we're coming in and out so fast because we're telling so many stories and trying to get to so many places. And even in Captain America Brave New World, I felt like it was 5 different stories, and I was trying to keep up and trying to trying to follow
Yes.
everybody. So I think it was nice to slow it down a little, because I do feel like the pace of this one was slower. It felt slower. It had more gravitas. It was weightier. And so I felt like it was slower, and we could immerse ourselves in the characters and in their stories and in their backstories in a way that we don't get in some of the big bang boom pow kind of movies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Very.
where Marvel does best, or where it's traditionally done best, is when they use the superhero movie as basically kind of like a costume for like another type of movie. So
Yes.
I mean, the Captain America movies are a good example of this, right? The first one is basically a pulpy World War II adventure, right? The second one is a modern day political thriller, right? But it's just got the mask of a captain of a superhero on it. But at the core, that's what it is, right? I mean, First Avenger has a lot more in common with Indiana Jones than it does with, say, Superman the movie. Doctor Strange is this metaphysical fantasy film. The Ant-Man movies are caper films and things like that. When that's what the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, right? Space opera. And when they've used that and they've kind of clued into that as like, here's this other type of movie we're going to tell, but the main character just happens to be a superhero instead. And I think some of the movies they've kind of gotten away from that. And so like when we talked about Brave New World, they had some of the political thriller stuff in it, but they pulled back, and whenever they did that and they focused more on the superhero, they put the superhero elements more as their focus, as opposed to this is a political thriller with a superhero in it. The movie itself lost focus. Whereas this one, it clued in the fact that this is going to be a story about mental health. This is going to be a character study piece. And it just so happens that the characters in it happen to wear funny costumes. And that was it. But otherwise, at its core, it was that character driven movie. And it was nice because if you had that advanced knowledge of these characters from things like Falcon and the Winter Soldier or Black Widow, then you go in and you have your preconceptions about these characters. I mean, like, Florence Pugh, she's been amazing in every single project. We've gotten a lot of Yelena, and she's been like the she's been the standout star of pretty much every single MCU project she's been involved in, right? Black Widow, she was the standout in that. Hawkeye, even though she only had like 2 episodes, she's still the standout in that too. And then here, like, this is basically her movie at its core. So we knew we were going to get a lot of Yelena. We've seen a lot of her development over the time, but we also got John Walker. Like, I don't know, I don't know how to tell you how many times I've gone on Reddit and I've seen people before and after this movie, talking about how, oh, John Walker is such a piece of shit. He is the worst character ever. And then afterwards being like, my God, John Walker is such an interesting guy. I really feel for him, right? Or even, you know, Red Guardian, like, he was kind of like he was fun in Black Widow, but there wasn't a whole lot of meat in his character there. But here we see like him struggling with this idea of like, well, I was a hero. Now what do I do that I was this national hero and my nation fell. So now what do I do? Or Val, right? We get a whole lot about her worldview and how that formed, whereas before she's just kind of like the scenery chewing villain you love to hate. But here you watch her and you're like, oh, she's got some pathos there behind driving that, and that's driving her to do these things. So all of it gave us a very good window into who these characters are, why they do the things they do, why does someone become a supervillain? I think this, and even they're not all of them are necessarily supervillains, but that does give you kind of a hint as to how that kind of happens. And I think that the idea of Marcie had mentioned this thing about someone tells you something, and I think you look at Val and you think about all these kind of like shysters and grifters out there, and you kind of see like Val is kind of a stand-in for that. She promises them all like, oh, you want to be a hero, I can make you a hero, I can make you a hero. You just have to do these little things first, and then you sell a little bit of your soul, a little bit more, and then before you know it, you're in too deep. And that's what's happened to all of them.
I also think that the story of Red Guardian and Yelena, as they try to repair their relationship in the midst of all of this other stuff, I think was a great storyline as well, because I think it did give some depth into both of their characters on their motivations all along, and the misconceptions they had about one another and their places in each other's lives, and that kind of thing. I think it was the way they weave that story into the bigger story, I think was also quite well done. I enjoyed watching that play out. I think to Perry's point, it gave a lot of depth to Red Guardian as more than just a happy-go-lucky, kind of, it really kind of helps you understand his motivation, and to see him have to be vulnerable so that Yelena could be vulnerable, so that she could move past, the guilt she had about herself. I think those scenes were really strong, and they really did. I mean, they delivered, they acted. I mean, I think that's one of the things about people not getting to see this necessarily, that it didn't get the viewership that it should have, because they probably had to act more than most Marvels, because the story was driven by your connection to them in a way that we don't always see when there's a bunch of things blowing up and everybody is comic foils. This time they had to like really dig in and show us who they were in a different way. And so I do kind of regret that people didn't that it wasn't quite sure what it was people were going to see. And you had to risk it. You just I think that that's the thing that I was most disappointed about, is that Marvel made the way that it was presented didn't give people enough to want to risk it. So I think most people didn't. And I think that that's the biggest kind of flaw for me, was that I feel like, I don't know if anybody's ever seen that Cosby Show episode where it's the steak on the garbage can lid, but I feel like that's kind of what it was. It was a really great film that was presented in a not so great way, and I think it allowed people to overlook it.
I think it created a disconnect between the movie you thought you were seeing and then the movie you actually saw.
And then I think people just voted, I don't want to see either one. Like, I don't know what I'm going to see, so I don't want to see any. And I think that was a disservice to the film itself.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I was going to ask the question, what did y'all think about the response and the marketing and thing? But everybody's kind of said it, and I want to kind of piggyback on that. Yes, I mean, just like Perry and Marcie and Jen are saying, Marvel kind of dropped the ball here on the marketing because you're not sure what you're going to get when you went in for this movie. And I think the people that don't know any of these characters are like, now why do I want to get to know these characters? What are their powers, whatever, or even do I care? Right?
Right.
Other thing is when people are going in, they may be thinking, they may be on the, like how Jen is a Florence Pugh fan, you know, maybe you're just going in for that. Like, do I want
Yeah.
to take a leap on this where it looks like she's leading it? I like her. Do I want to take a leap? Or a fan of whoever, right?
Right.
So it's like, do I want to do that? Because I don't know what this movie is really about. And if it's a superhero movie, do I want to get caught up in this, right? So there's that. And then, like Perry is saying, if you're a comic book fan, this does not look anything like the comic book. So why am I going in? And what is my MCU connection? And do I care? And then there's the MCU fans out there who, ever since Endgame, they're like,
What
what?
is this?
Right? What is this next thing? Like, do I need to know these people? Like, I see Robert Downey Jr. gonna be another character. Do I need to know who these people are first? I mean, do I really have to watch this?
Right. There was all of that hype
It's
like 2 weeks before about what was coming in 2026. And then 2 weeks later,
right,
we get Thunderbolts. Also,
right.
Harry, I didn't know what the asterisk meant. And I was like,
Well, no one did. That was the big thing. Everybody was wondering,
Right,
like,
nobody did.
what is the asterisk all about? And the theory everyone had, that was the kind of the popular theory, was that, oh, it's actually going to be Dark Avengers, because that was another comic book where you had like a bunch of
Ooh,
villains who were basically ripped off the Thunderbolts concept. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe it'll be the Dark Avengers then. So then they ended up being New Avengers. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So yeah, it was, but I'm also I had said that it wasn't marketed that well, but I'm also gonna argue against myself here, because I think Marvel was also kind of in a bind, because how do you market this?
That's the other thing. That was the other that I wanted to say about it, because just like what you said, Perry, it is a movie about depression. It is a character study. It is a dramatic movie with people in costume, right? Or with people being superheroes. And you are MCU. Do you market that? Right? How am I going to get my audience to come to this? Because my audience, I don't really know about my audience. Let's be honest, right? They know that there's big parts of their audience that are coming for different things, right? A lot of people are not coming to see a movie about how to deal with depression, especially when they might be going through depression right at that moment. I
Oh,
mean,
exactly.
Right.
and plus the timing in the US of this was awful. Like, I'm not the only person who lost their job around the time that this came out. A whole lot of people from the federal government lost their jobs, right? So things were starting to implode.
Yes.
Yep.
At that moment. So
yeah,
marketing this as a movie about dealing with depression, that's not gonna fly, right?
Right.
Second thing is, you got superheroes in it, and so we've got to figure out how market this to the people that are actually coming to a Marvel movie to see Marvel superheroes. And even some of these superheroes are superheroes that we might know, right? Or villains, or whatever you want to call anti-heroes. I don't know, whatever you want to call them. How do you market that? Your audience is so disparate.
Right.
I feel like this is one of those movies that people are going to be discovering later, and they're going to be like, how come I never heard of this thing? How did I miss out on this? It kind of makes me think of in some ways to like, The Amazing Spider-Man or Superman Returns, where at the time those movies didn't do as well as the studios wanted them to. A lot of people were complaining about them. And then, after Brandon Routh pops up in Crisis on Infinite Earths as Superman, or after we see Andrew Garfield pop up in Spider-Man No Way Home, people go back and they're like, hey, wait a minute. These are actually
Yep.
kind of solid. How come? So
Right.
I think like after I think Avengers Doomsday is going to introduce a lot of these characters for the Thunderbolts to people, and then they're going to be like, I really liked seeing that group over there. Wait, they were in a movie together? Let me go check that out on Disney Plus. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss out on this the first time?
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen too.
I agree.
And I think that's what's going to happen definitely to Thunderbolts. I think it's going to happen to maybe even a couple of the TV shows, maybe. But maybe even the Black Widow movie that people slept on because of the pandemic.
Well,
I think that's what's going to happen. Doomsday is going to give them a kind of a bounce back kind of thing. So
yeah.
and then we're going to have an episode on the Fantastic Four. So we're not talking about Fantastic Four right now, but
Okay.
it links together so much that
It
I
does.
think it's also going to give maybe even a bounce back to Fantastic Four, which also has its own issues because, good Lord, how many times have they tried to do the Fantastic Four?
And I'm gonna be
I
honest,
know.
Four
I
times.
watched
This is
all
the
of
this
them.
is the
I've
fourth
seen all
this is
of them.
this is the fourth time they've done it.
Jeez Louise.
Well,
I've seen
two
every one
movies,
of
but
them.
four attempts at the Tim Story one's got 2 films, so that but it's 5 movies, but 4 different versions, basically.
Right, because that other one
Jeez
had Rise of the
Louise.
Silver Surfer too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, Rise of the Silver, that was part of the Tim Story ones, but there was the Roger
Exactly.
Corman
That
one
was
back from
yeah.
1994.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that was the
Oh,
one with Michael B.
jeez.
Jordan. And then they had the two
No,
in the
Michael B. Jordan one was there have been so the first one
that
was
was the
actually
first
1990. The first one was 1994. It was a low budget version that they destroyed the negatives of because Avi Arad didn't want it being released because they had paid Roger Corman. Basically, Roger Corman made this movie basically just so that the studio could hold on to the rights, and so it was had a budget of like $2 million. And you can find it on YouTube, but it's like very low budget. It's
Oh.
really interesting. Yeah. There's also a really good
my
documentary
gosh.
about it, about the making of it and how the cast got like screwed over and nobody knew that this was basically being made just to be shoved in a drawer.
Oh my
Documentary
God.
is called Doomed. It's really, really interesting. But yeah, then the Tim Story ones from the early 2000s, that was the second attempt, actually. That was the one with Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis and
Yeah.
Jessica Alba.
I
And then
I enjoyed both of those. I did.
they were both they have their flaws, but they're mostly enjoyable. And then there was the Josh Trank one that was in the like 2013, 24, somewhere around there.
Is that the Michael B.
And
Jordan one?
that's the Michael B. Jordan one, and that is
Oh, okay.
obvious,
Okay.
definitely the worst of the bunch.
It was not great.
No,
It was.
but we'll be talking about that later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be talking about that
Right.
in the
Any other one?
but yes, what I was trying to say was I think Doomsday is going to end up giving people that, oh, I need to go back and watch this.
Right.
And I think with Thunderbolts, they're really going to enjoy this because I really feel I mean, I really like the story on this one.
Yeah. The
I
family
really
line.
like the story. I agree with Marcie about the pacing. And that kind of pacing gave us the time to actually get to know these characters. And the story helps, right? Because every time Bob touches somebody, we get backstory, y'all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we get a deeper level of appreciation for these characters. And that's also contributing to the story. I really just love the way that this story was put together. And I know we mentioned some characters here and what they brought or whatever, but everybody, do we have a favorite? Oh, before I get into that. So the other thing about the story part and the other thing about kind of the marketing of this, and I can see why they would have a problem. When Perry and Marcie were talking about the fact that these are character driven and they just happen to have superhero suits on, like that one scene where they're on the street and they're arguing, and they're like, no, we do not want to, we are not going to be the Thunderbolts. We are not going to be these people. The Thunderbolts was a soccer team. No, we don't want to do
Right.
this. And they're arguing, and they're on a New York City street. And Yelena says she's a loser, and this woman is just walking by her, like looking at her, like, what is wrong with you? I mean, that is the perfect scene right there that actually captures the essence of this movie.
Yeah.
You know, you've got these superheroes walking around on the street arguing in the middle of New York City. And people are just walking by living their lives. It really, you know, puts together the genius, I think, of this movie. And it also, in a sense, makes it very hard to market, especially if you are a superhero company. This would be different if it was, you know, like just something on ABC, right? That's not
Right.
just something on
And
ABC.
and
This
as
is a
an
superhero.
anti-trailer person,
Oh, yeah.
I can see how it would be very hard to put. I mean, I can see why it was so hard to put together a trailer that
Yeah.
didn't give away the best parts of the movie. Because I hate
Exactly.
feeling like I saw the best parts of the movie in the trailer, and then I'm like, you know. And so I can understand how you couldn't put it into a trailer. And so I get it was hard to market. I do hope that you're right, that in the run up to the new films, that people and all the podcasters and that guy who makes his family, you know, yells at him and gives them the timeline, and you got to watch this movie in this order. Like, I hope that those people are including these movies in that discussion, and reminding people that they're out there to be seen before, for all the people who want to like prep for the next Avengers, that they do, that this does become part of the conversation. Because I think you're right, it needs to be, and I do think it'll help people refresh their minds, but also have a fresh perspective coming into what I'm hoping moves us forward from where we were. So I do hope you're right, that it becomes one of those like cult classics that people didn't see in the theaters, but like everybody talks about, because it is one that deserves that kind of recognition. I mean, it was a great film. So my family went to see this. So we're talking about from teenagers to middle age to a senior citizen, and we all loved it. It's really a movie that everybody can look at and take something from.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. We will continue this discussion on our next episode. Make sure you're subscribed to Nerdy Romantics Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and visit nerdyromanticspodcast.com to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can get show notes directly in your inbox. Thank you for listening.